Now time for the first ever Paris Roubaix Femmes preview, dropping, I think, on Wednesday night. A reminder, Joss Loudon for Drops Le Col is going for the women's hour record tomorrow, Thursday, 30th of September, 4 p.m. British Standard Time, 5 p.m. Central European Time on Le Col's YouTube channel. You can see it in full. We'll put the link in the description, or I believe Eurosport Player. So good luck to her, and thanks to Le Col for supporting both the show and women's cycling. But Benji, the first ever edition of Paris Roubaix Femmes, 117 k's long. We have 18 cobbled sectors, but the, I think, thing missing, which I don't necessarily disagree with, is the Arenberg section and the Avaloy-Valeurs section. So we're missing that 5-star cobble section. Is that necessarily a bad thing starting in Denain, or do you think that maybe it'll keep the race a bit together in this first edition?
Yeah, you're right. We've got Arenberg not on the parcours here right now, and well, we basically have the men's parcours divided in half, because the men's parcours has 30 cobble sections, this one has 17, and it's the last 17 of the men's parcours, which means that you don't have the initial run-in that is basically everything that goes towards the Arenberg, including the Arenberg. And we basically start at the 17th sector from the end, so that's 13 in the men's parcours, and that's Ornans-Wadigny. And that's not the biggest of sectors, so don't expect too much from the initial pod. Although we don't know, because we haven't seen it before. We might see someone opening up at that point in the race. But I think it's going to be a bit later for some people. Nonetheless, we do have the most important sectors afterwards. You mentioned it already, Mons-en-Pévèle and Carrefour de l'Arbre, but also plenty of sectors in between that are 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, and are going to make this race an absolute attrition race. And yeah, parcours-wise, I kind of like it. What's your take on Arenberg not being in it?
I think it's fine. I mean, you don't want to... I think you want to make sure the race is tight and competitive for the first edition rather than overcooking the parcours and then it's, one rider solo. I'm not sure. That's not what I want to see personally. But onto the start list, we obviously have the big names are Van Vleuten, Vos, Longo Borghini, Lotte Kopecky, Emma Norsgaard, Malin Reusser, Kasia Niewiadoma, Ellen van Dijk, Cecilia Uttrup-Ludwig, and Lorena Wiebes, Benji, who we rarely see. She doesn't like a hill, Wiebes, but she is the quickest woman alive in a sprint. And just like I said with Philipsen for the men's, in Demar, you always got to look out for riders like this, or Greipel at RBV. But starting with the DSM team, Benji, I think it's a weird place to start, but I do want to start there. They got Pfeiffer Georgi, Suzanne Anderson, Floortje Mackay, Lorena Wiebes. No Lippert, no Rivera. Is that surprising to you? Wiebes, no Rivera?
I don't know. I think that Wiebes is the better choice when it comes to what a profile of a rider is when it comes to Roubaix usually. And Rivera does have the experience of doing RVV quite well, obviously, from her history. But the RVV cobbles are different from the Roubaix cobbles, and it's the hill aspect that plays a lot in that. Roubaix is going to be hardcore, just being able to eat those cobbles for 17 sectors. And I got to be honest, then I would rate Wiebes potentially higher than Rivera personally. But what's your take on those two riders comparatively?
It's a comparison that, made me think, I don't know. Like, we're doing a preview in the dark here. We've no data on how the women's peloton goes on flat cobbles and this quantity of cobbles too. In a race, yes, we have RVV, we have some cobble climbs at Gent-Wevelgem, but Paris-Roubaix is very different. And I don't know how many Ks of cobbles we've got, like 30, 25 plus. That's different to RVV, as you all know. So
yeah, and like when it comes to how the women will approach this race is going to be different as well, because you would argue that there's going to be some that are going to say, I'm not sure I will be able to survive all these cobble sections. I might need to go early and go on the early cobble sections, or an early move that gets me into a group ahead, while there's people that will be confident in their cobble ability that might stay along for the ride a bit more and then launch it big time on Mons-en-Pévèle and expect to be able to catch a group that is already gone at that point. Or do you think that it's just going to be the peloton just riding like crazy and whoever's left at the end is left at the end?
Well, let's look at, say, the rider that might want to go along, but she's got her teammate there who's fast too, Movistar, and see how that might affect the race. Van Vleuten on Movistar, she rides one way, which is attacking a lot, whether it's for better or worse. Often it is for worse. If you look at Amstel on her trade teams, I'm not just talking about international events, Amstel on Kalberg. Will she attack early? I'd say so. Will that put pressure on her teammate Norsgaard, who is the fastest rider on that team? Probably. I mean, Norsgaard, I've got to say, is a little bit disappointed in the road race. I'm not sure if she crashed or something that I missed, but yeah, she's not had the form I expected in the latter third of the season, to be honest. Maybe she's just going to an Olympic road race that never really suited her, but I had her as a top 3 favourite for this race when it was announced, given her Brugge de Panne result, given her speed, given second at Shell de Praise, which was behind Lorena Wiebes, who's the fastest woman alive, beat Balsamo there. Yeah, I just think, I don't know where her form is at. What would your plan be if you were Movistar Van Vleuten? Who is the strongest rider in the race? No AVDB here. Or am I discounting Vos too much?
What do you mean, strongest rider outside of Movistar now, or?
Strongest rider in the race who you have as your favourite? Or should be favourite in the betting?
Three riders that I'm looking at for a potential top 3 here. And that's Van den Broek Blaak at Team SD Works that I'm like, okay, this fits her to the bone. Ellen van Dijk also, in my opinion, fits her to the bone. And then the third rider is Lisa Brennauer, who has had, like always, like second and third positions on cobble races this season. Sure. RVV, second. Jen Dwevelgem, third. And then if we look at Omloop, 7th. We look at 2020, we have second in OxyClean. That's not really 100% cobbly. RVV 4th there, third in Jen Dwevelgem. She's really unable to like get that one victory the last 2 years. And I feel like this might be a race that completely suits to her to the bone because she's an amazing time trialist, like a Reuser is. But the difference is that I feel like we've seen much more from Brennauer on cobbles than from Reuser so far.
I like Kopecky a lot for this race. If there's a race that's supposed to suit a lot of Kopecky, who I know I don't always like, and we don't always do comparisons between the men and the women's, but first edition, she reminds me of a Degenkolb or Christoph style rider in their peaks, maybe even a bit better climber, better punch. And yes, she's consistent throughout the classics. 1 Le Samin, 4th at Daniela Nökerekourse, 4th at Brugge de Panne, 2nd at Gent-Wevelgem. The climbs didn't suit her as much at the Ronde, it seemed. 1 Belgian national champs road race. Yeah, I really like Kopecky for this race. The question mark for her always is the team, both in international events and here. Although Alison Jackson is very strong, it's not as deep a team as, say, an SD Works, as Benji mentioned. Chantal van der Broek, like, Cecchini, Jolene Dora, Majorus, Peters, Lonneke Uneken. They are the quick step, the right team that can play multiple cards with Peters, Majorus, and Cecchini. Well, Jolene Dora, Benji, also someone who I don't think likes hills, but is a good, experienced classics rider.
Yes, certainly. I think it's also one of her last races. Isn't she retiring? I'm not sure about
this year.
Okay. So, that's sad. But SD Works, you're right. My question surrounding that is more that I'm not sure how much the SD Works team will be able to fight for this race as a team. Because obviously in other races, they're able to go one rider, then another rider, then another rider. But I'm not 100% certain whether that will be able to be achievable on a Roubaix parcours. Sure, we've seen it in the men's races with De Koning, but I've also got the feeling that Roubaix is kind of the one where when it comes to like sending one rider ahead and other people responding, that usually you do get a response from other people, and it's the cobbles that do most of the deciding. And I feel like that's why the SD Works effect might be a bit less of a thing on this race, but I could be completely wrong on that.
Well, I don't think so. They're missing Pieke van der Breggen, who seems to have dialed it down a little bit second half of the season. There's no Demi Vollering either, which is somewhat surprising, but she's had a long year as well. I think going to a rider who is almost crazy we haven't mentioned her in full, the Jumbo-Visma women's team with Anna Henderson, very strong, Rihanna Marcus, in very good shape, and Of course, Marianne Vos, the GOAT. Why doesn't this suit Vos, Benji? Cyclocross, multiple-time world champion. Yes, she's a little bit lighter, but if there's someone who can handle the cobbles, who understands positioning, who I think was in fine form at the world champs, frankly, I've already spoken about the Netherlands tactics, and she's got the punch, not someone you want to go to at the finish. Surely she must be considered a top 3 favourite. Or are you just rating the heavier riders, like you mentioned, on the cobbles over her?
I don't know. I feel like when it comes to cyclocross, I look at cyclocross with multiple disciplines within the sport of cyclocross. You've got the sand pit where riders have to like mash their way through sand. You've got the parts where they have to go onto punchy ramps and be able to do that faster than other people. You've got the muddy sections and just the basic cyclocross parkour you have, and that is leaning more towards being supportive for cobbles. I could be wrong, but I somehow, because of all the stuff we've seen in the road races that Vos is doing, that she leans a tiny bit more towards the punchy side of things and perhaps benefits so much from those punchy sides that she's able to do a lot on these hilly classics and so forth on the road. And I'm not 100% convinced about being able to stay with a Van den Broek block that is going ultimate ham on the last cobble section on Carrefour de l'Arbre, personally. But top 5 seems like very doable to me.
I'm going to whip through some of the big favourites on the other teams or leaders of other teams. Can't miss Marlon Reusser, huge engine at Ali BTC Ljubljana. She is too hilly, I think, the other day at World Champs, or just too punchy, rather, for her. I think she is a huge, huge chance here. She got Bastianelli, Bujak, Cursina. Is Cursina the one that won the Burgos stage, yeah. Benji? Yeah, she's quite good as well. So
was she a terrible descender?
Yes. So
I wonder about her technique.
Yeah, true. Exactly. We will see. There will be, I think, a bigger divergence in technique here. Some riders like Chantal van den Broek Black, I think, has a huge advantage, as Benji mentioned. Brennau is obviously 100% leader for Sarah Tizet WNT. I'm keen to see Faulkner at Team Tibco. At FDJ, though, Cavalli, Ludwig, who is the one there, Benji? We've often seen those two in groups, and I'm never sure which one is the actual protected leader.
That's difficult to say for this parkour. I have a hard time defining this because Cecilia Turp Ludwig is decent in RVV. She's obviously a good puncher, but I'm not 100% convinced when it comes to the Roubaix parkour. And I think that's partially because of her build as a rider. But for me, Cavalli is likely the rider that will come out on top of those two on this parkour.
What about, I can't see her name on the start list, Benji. She was called out for this race over and over and over, and I didn't like her shape before Worlds. She's not on the start list. Lucinda Brandt, she's 36th at Worlds. What's going on? I thought this was one of her A targets.
I don't know. I have no clue about that. So I can't tell you. She's not on the start list. They've got Codomago, who will probably go on an attack with a long way to go because that's what she enjoys doing in the last few months when it comes to the race, and it puts other teams in trouble and they have to start chasing. And I think that's the same thing that SD-Works is doing in a lot of races. So I think that there's a lot of teams that have multiple of riders to do quite well here. And I think that despite all that, how much do we see the possibility of a rider that we are not calling out still happening, because we can't know every possibility here, but someone on PARKHOTEL, for example, shaping up to be one of the strong riders as well, for example, or someone at Next Gen Racing, the Shari Bosside, for example. I think she's a cyclocross rider as well. So
Charlotte Cool.
All these, what? Sorry,
Charlotte Cool on NXTG. She beat Balsamo at that French race, didn't she?
Yeah, but I think it was flat sprint, or am I?
It was like a. I'm not sure if it had little climbs in it. I'm just saying she's she's 22, she's talented, she's fast. That's a team to watch. That Benji called out, NXTG Racing. What about, we haven't mentioned her name, Benji, Elisa Balsamo, world champ on Valkar. She got around the world champs course. She's fucking fast. I think she's got good seated power too. Do you think she can make it round here?
Yeah, I think she can. I think she's potentially top 10ing this race, if not more. Mainly because she already top 15 RVV, and I'd argue that the hill part is the part of RVV that was not ideal for her. And the cobble part is what she should be on paper pretty decent at. And Brabant Sapel, she proved that by being in the breakaway as well. Scheldeprijs, not sure I would call that really a defining cobble race these days. Gent-Wevelgem fourth, she got over those hills. Yes, it was a reduced bunch sprint, but she got over it. So she was able to sprint for it. Top 20 at Omloop. She should be doing quite well here on this parkour. And I can't wait to see it because I'm looking forward to see the world champion at the front of the race in Roubaix, to be honest.
I hope she wins because that world champs kit, her long hair, the pink bib shorts on Valkar, that thumbnail for my highlight video of Paris Roubaix Femmes will look absolutely cracked. It will pop in the search or the YouTube homepage. So I'm hoping Balsamo wins. Got Chiara Consoni and Glazzini there on Valkar. They're strong as well. I'm just looking through any other names. Sarah Roy, I think this is a race that should suit her as well, one would think. Yeah, sort of a classic
Is she
sprinter.
in form these days, though?
No, not in great form, I don't think. And I was surprised by her Gent-Wevelgem result earlier in the year. We don't have Grace Brown. She's injured, unfortunately. And yeah, so she won't be here. I'm looking. What about Niewiadoma, Benji? She's been the best puncher, pure puncher, I think, in the world this year in terms of a 1K 6% climb, 7% climb. Is she just too light? Do you like someone like Shabby or the Barnes sisters who may be a bit bigger, a bit faster on the flat?
It's hard to say. I honestly, I'm so not sure about Niewiadoma. She had a decent RVV, also top 20. When it comes to Gent-Wevelgem, she was not in the first group there. So that's the one where I'm like, that's having some influence. But then again, she was going for the Hill Classics afterwards. So you can't be in form for 3 months in a row unless your name is Roglic in certain years. And I think she is probably going to top 20, but these are the kind of questions that will be answered by the race itself and are impossible for me to answer right now because same story with Uttrup Ludwig. I'm like, yeah, she loves cobbles, but can she get over them in Roubaix and finish in the top 10 of Roubaix? That's a good question, and I'd love to see it, but I don't know it. And that's kind of the questions we have right now. Do we see anyone on Drops Le Col? Marjolein van Geloof or someone?
Emilie Molberg, the Norwegian. She's probably their best shout. She's fast. She, I think, is not someone you'd want to go to the velodrome with. She came, I'm trying to look for a result, 4th at Scheldeprijs. She's quite fast. So, yeah, watch out for her on Drops Le Col. But I think, yeah, Jolien van der Kloof is probably better pure cobbler, one would think. How do you think the tactics will play out, Benji? Which team is going to animate it in that first 5-star sector, which is the one, Mons-en-Pavel? Or will it be earlier than that? Do you think on the first cobble sections we have a 4-star as the first one? Do you think it will be FD Works, like a quick step we would expect in the men's race?
I would expect one of the earlier moves indeed to have a secondary rider on SD Works perhaps go already. And perhaps Van den Broek Blaak stays a bit behind for now. An Uniken, for example, a Majerus, a Peters. Dora, I'm not sure what role she shall play, because obviously she has a sprint. What, sorry?
I think she'll stay behind.
And Van den Broek Blaak I expect to open up on a 5-star sector personally. Or if she goes earlier, that's it's allowed. She may. But I also see other teams doing exactly the same as the SD Works here. They're a good team here, but they're not at the extreme top where it's like miles difference between other teams. I've got the feeling that Trek is also very strong at the start here, and Ljubljana has Bastianelli, Reuser. Those are also riders that usually do relatively well on a parkour like this. I have no clue about Guderzo. I vaguely remember her being world champion, but does she have great cobble history? Or am I being an idiot right now?
She did well at the Italian national champs. Not so good at the cobble classics earlier in the year, though. But yeah, she's fast, I guess. I think when, as Benji said, when Majerus goes, when Amy Peters or Lonika Uniken goes in a move, she will be followed by a Suzanne Anderson, a Pfeiffer Georgie, a Floortje Mackay on DSM, or a Cordon Rigaud,
Marcus,
or a Marcus on Jumbo-Visma. Do not be the team to miss it, because you'll be chasing and on the back foot.
Yeah.
And so that's how I think the early tactics will play out, similar to a lot of the classics this year. I think Shabby will be trying to get up there as well. And then as we get into the 5-star sectors, maybe it's not going to be as linear as we're saying. We will see the big guns like Van den Broek Black, like Van Dijk come to the fore, and Brennauer. I think
hopefully not to the floor.
not to the floor, hopefully. I think the three, I'm going to go with my podium now, Benji. I think it'll be even solo. I think she'll go solo. I think I'm going for Lisa Brennauer to win ahead of Chantal van den Broek Black and Ellen van Dijk.
Okay. I'm going to, well, that was mine as well.
They're the three favorites, I think.
I'm going to also go for Brennauer, and second Van den Broek Black, and third, it's either Van Dijk or Reuser for me. So I'll, do I have to pick? I have to pick, right?
Of course you have to pick.
I tried, okay. Like, I'm trying to get out of this one. I'm gonna say Reuser on this one, out of the four there. And there's probably going to be lots of riders that we are looking at and we're like, we are not sure they can do it, and will suddenly pop up in the top 10 because we just don't know it yet. And I'm looking forward to finding it out, because not only might it be a wonderful race to look at, which it hopefully is, but it's also going to be an indicator of who's the bloody best cobbler in the peloton right now.
Exactly.
And I want to figure that out. And when it comes to all these riders, sure, luck is going to play a role, because we know the weather is going to be batshit crazy based on current projections when it comes to rain and wind. And on one end, you're like happy that it's a rainy Roubaix, but on the other end, I'm a bit worried because we haven't seen them ride on the cobbles. I completely trust that they have the ability to do so, but I don't want it to be ruined by half of them crashing out.
Yeah, which could happen like to see race.
Men's race as well. And I would like to see a Roubaix that is fought by the best of them and won by the best of them, if that makes any sense.
Got to remember, the reason I went with Brennauer is both I liked her TT result in the World Championships, and then her teammate Maria Confalonieri, the Italian, 28 years old. She came 6th at GP Duisburg. She did well at the road race. She was part of the lead out for Balsamo, making it deep into that race. That's good form for me. I think Van Dijk is the strongest flat rider in the peloton right now. I'm not sure that's really a controversial opinion. She won World Champs ITT and is in crazy form. She'll need Elisa to work for her, I think. Maybe in a few spots sort of set it up. I do think Trek is the most dangerous team in full. If they all work together, I think Dijknen should work for Van Dijk. Personally, I think Van Dijk's their woman. But yeah, any other last thoughts, Benji?
Honestly, just looking forward to it. It's a race that is arguably one of my most hyped races of the season, and that's cool that it's coming close, and hopefully it's a very good race that we can all enjoy and that has some tactics to talk about afterwards, because if it's just a very strong rider riding away from couple section 1, then I don't know, it might still be interesting as well, but it will mostly be impressive, and we will sit here on the podcast afterwards. Well, okay, she rode away, and that's the end. And that's, I think, the danger with the parkour and why they tried to not make it through it on Berg already, because they don't know what the effect of this parkour will be on the women's peloton. And I think that it currently is a good indicator on whether the parkour needs to be harder next year or not.
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit longer for me. It could be 150. I prefer it to be 150, but maybe not so many cobble sections. I'd like it to be a 4-hour plus race. No need to be racing for 3.5. But anyway, I can't wait. This is emblematic of the, I think, ascent of women's cycling right now. We are getting the first Paris Roubaix edition, the biggest one-day race I think people have said, oh, you don't want to, why does women's cycling need to follow the same mistakes as the men? Well, the reality is the biggest races that make the most money, draw the most interest in the men's, and have the biggest name recognition are the races like Roubaix and like next year Tour de France Femmes. When you give that brand value and you put it on women's cycling, it can only increase it. I saw that myself when I had, say, Liège women, Flèche women, Amstel women, those highlights. There was that name recognition on the videos on my channel. Didn't matter that it was the women's races, and people clicked. When it's a race they haven't heard of, like maybe a healthy aging tour or something, that it's not a historical race, it's tougher. Whereas Paris-Roubaix, it's going to be a success, I hope, in TDF Femme next year. But good luck to Drops the Coal. They got some low-key dark horse riders in there, and of course Joss Loudon tomorrow. And we'll see you at the recap after Paris-Roubaix Femme, as well as my highlight video. Until then, ciao.